The Council challenged humanity and paid the ultimate price part. The great hall of the Galactic Concord shimmered with cold light. Tall, smooth walls curved upward into a dome made of living crystal that pulsed faintly with energy. Around a wide circular table sat the delegates of 17 species, each more alien than the last. Some had too many eyes. Others had no eyes at all. Their voices, translated by floating orbs, mixed into a low hum of judgment. At the center of the room stood one human. His name was Rael. He wore a simple gray uniform with no medals, no rank, no show of power. He looked small among the towering figures around him, but his back was straight and his eyes did not drop. The High Arbiter of the Concord leaned forward. Its body was long and segmented, covered in polished black plates that clicked softly as it moved. "Earth," it said, its voice flat and sharp, "you have broken the Prime Accord." Rael did not flinch. "State your charge. You have taken technology not your own," the Arbiter continued. "From a derelict warship near Neptune. You have studied it, copied it, built from it. This is forbidden." A murmur passed through the Council. Most of them had watched humanity for years, ever since humans first reached Mars, then the asteroid belt, then the outer planets. They had allowed Earth provisional membership in the Concord 10 years ago, mostly out of pity. Humans were clever, they admitted, but chaotic, emotional, unstable, not ready for true galactic society. Now, they believed, humanity had proven them right. Rael kept his voice calm. "We recovered a wreck. Salvage is permitted under Article 9 of the Accord." "Not when the wreck belongs to a protected class," snapped a delegate from the Cathari, a species of floating jelly-like beings who communicated through color shifts. Their orb translated their anger into sharp tones. That ship was a relic of the Silent War. Its systems are sealed by conquered law. Rael knew this. He also knew something they did not. The truth was, the ship near Neptune had not been just a wreck. It had been a message. Buried in its core was data, fragments of a language older than the Concord itself. Humans had not copied its engines. They had understood them, and in understanding they had improved them. But Rael said none of this. Instead he asked, "What does the Concord demand?" The High Arbiter rose fully now, its limbs unfolding like blades. "You will surrender all research. Dismantle your orbital shipyards, cease all deep space construction, and accept a 100-year embargo on advanced technology." Silence followed. The punishment was severe. It would send Earth back to the age of chemical rockets. It would freeze their progress for generations. "And if we refuse?" Rael asked quietly. The Arbiter's voice turned colder. "Then Earth will be placed under full quarantine. No ships in, no ships out, no trade, no communication. You will be cut off from the galaxy until you comply." Rael looked around the room. He saw no pity, no doubt. Only certainty. They believed humanity had no choice but to obey. He gave a small nod. "I will carry your terms back to Earth." He turned and walked out, his boots clicking against the polished floor. Behind him, the Council resumed their whispers, already moving on to other matters. To them, this was settled. But as Rael stepped onto the shuttle that would take him home, his mind was already racing. Earth was not what the Concord thought it was. Back on Earth, the Unified Earth Directorate met in a hidden chamber beneath Geneva. The room was plain, white walls, simple chairs, no windows. Only 7 people were present. They were not generals or politicians. They were thinkers, builders, survivors. Rael stood before them and repeated every word from the Concord. When he finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Then a woman named Kira leaned forward. She had short, dark hair and hands calloused from years of working on deep space rigs. "They think we're still playing with toy rockets," she said, her voice rough but steady. "They don't know about Europa," said Torin, the quietest of the group. He rarely left his lab, but his eyes held a sharp intelligence. "They don't know what we've built in the ice." For years, while the world watched Mars colonies and asteroid mines, humanity had been working in secret. Beneath the frozen crust of Jupiter's moon Europa, machines had carved vast tunnels. There, shielded from all sensors, Project Icarus had been born. It was not just about engines. It was about a new kind of travel, faster than light, quieter than silence. Torin had found a way to fold space not with brute force but with resonance, like plucking a single note that made the universe bend, and they had built a ship to carry it. "The Aegis is ready," Kira said. Not fully armed, but flight-tested. She can run circles around anything the Conquered has. But we can't fight them, said another member, a former diplomat named Marin. They have fleets, bases, allies. We have one ship and a handful of secrets. We don't need to fight them all, Rael said. We just need to make them afraid. The room fell quiet again. They all knew what that meant. Fear was the only language the Conquered truly understood. Outside, the world went on as usual. Children went to school. Trains ran on time. News feeds talked about weather and sports. No one knew that Earth stood on the edge of war with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. But in the shadows, preparations began. Kira returned to the orbital docks, where crews worked day and night under false manifests. Torin sent encrypted updates to the labs on Europa, pushing the final calibrations on the quantum core. Rael drafted a public statement, calm, respectful, but firm, saying Earth would consider the Concord's demands. It was a lie. Deep in space, near the edge of the solar system, Concord scouts had already arrived. Small, silent drones watched Earth's movements. They saw the usual traffic: cargo haulers, research vessels, patrol cutters. Nothing unusual. They did not see the Aegis. She was hidden inside a hollowed-out comet, her hull coated in stealth polymers that absorbed radar and light. Her engines were cold. Her crew, only 12, waited in silence. Back on Earth, Rael stood on a rooftop at night looking up at the stars. He thought of the Council's smug faces, their certainty, their belief that humanity was still a child to be scolded and controlled. He smiled faintly. Let them believe it a little longer. Because soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. Humans were not children, they were survivors, and they did not bow. The Council challenged humanity and paid the ultimate price part. The Concord's patience ran out faster than Earth expected. Only 3 weeks after Rael's return, their answer came, not in words, but in warships. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each longer than a city block, slid into the outer solar system like silent predators. Around them circled a dozen smaller escorts, their hulls gleaming with polished alloy and humming with shield generators. They took position near the asteroid belt just beyond Mars and sent a single message: comply or be cut off. Earth's public channels broadcast calm reassurances. Officials spoke of diplomacy, of peaceful solutions, but deep beneath Geneva, in the same plain room as before, the truth was different. They're not waiting for our reply, Kira said, her eyes fixed on the star map hovering above the table. Red dots marked the conquered fleet. They're setting up a blockade. Torin nodded slowly. They think we'll panic, beg, surrender. We won't, Rael said. No, Kira agreed. We'll show them what panic really looks like. The Aegis was ready. Hidden in the dark folds of a dead comet, she had been fueled, armed, and crewed. Her design was unlike anything the Conquered had ever seen. No smooth curves or glowing fins. She was angular, brutal, built for function, not beauty. Her hull was layered with heat-dissipating plates and coated in a matte black that drank light. Most importantly, she carried the new drive, Torin's quantum resonance engine. It didn't burn fuel or warp space. It whispered to the fabric of reality. And reality answered by folding just enough to let the ship slip through. Kira would command her. She stood on the bridge now, surrounded by her small crew. 12 people, all volunteers, all trained in silence, in secrecy, and sacrifice. None of them had families listed in public records. If they died, the Conquered would never know their names. Status? Kira asked. Drive stable, said the pilot, a quiet man named Joss. Weapons online. Cloak holding. The Aegis didn't have traditional weapons. No plasma cannons or laser arrays. Instead, she carried resonance disruptors, devices that sent out tuned vibrations capable of shaking matter apart at the molecular level. A single pulse could turn a metal hull into dust without harming the crew inside. If aimed right, set course for Grid 7, Kira ordered. We hit the escorts first. The Aegis moved. Not with a roar, but with a sigh. The quantum drive activated, and the ship vanished from normal space for a fraction of a second before reappearing 10 million kilometers away. To outside sensors, it looked like a glitch, a shadow, nothing worth noting. The Conquered fleet noticed nothing. Their sensors were powerful, but they looked for energy spikes, heat trails, radiation bursts. The Aegis gave them none of that. She was cold, silent, ghostly. Kira guided her toward the rear of the formation where two escort ships patrolled a debris field left over from an old mining operation. Perfect cover. Deploy drones, she said. From hidden bays along the Aegis belly, 6 small machines slipped out. They looked like broken rocks, jagged, irregular, coated in the same stealth material as the ship. But inside, they carried micro-singularity mines. These were not explosives. They were tiny points of collapsed gravity, no bigger than a grain of sand, harmless until triggered. Then, for a split second, they opened a pinprick of infinite density. Anything too close would be shredded by tidal forces. The drones drifted into the debris field, blending in perfectly. Kira waited. Then, with a single command, she activated them. 2 of the Concorde escorts passed within range. There was no explosion, no flash. Just a ripple in space, so small it barely registered on sensors. And then the ships were gone, not destroyed. Not blown apart. Simply unmade. One moment they were there, the next only scattered atoms remained, drifting in the void. Alarms blared across the Concorde fleet. What happened? The dreadnought commander demanded. Unknown, came the reply. No weapon signature. No debris pattern. It's like they vanished. Panic spread fast. The Concorde had never faced an enemy like this. No warning, no trace. Just loss. Back on the Aegis, Kira allowed herself a small breath. Now they're scared. But fear made the Concorde reckless. Within hours, they sent out hunter-killer squads, fast, armored scouts designed to track stealth targets. They swept the area with every sensor they had. Gravitic pulses, neutrino scans, quantum echoes. They still found nothing. What they didn't know was that Torin had anticipated this. While Kira fought in space, he worked from Earth. Using the diplomatic access codes granted during humanity's provisional membership, he had planted a silent program inside the Concorde's own communication network. It wasn't a virus. It was a mirror. Every message, every order, every alert sent by the Concorde was now copied and sent directly to Earth's command center. So, when the High Arbiter ordered the fleet to tighten the blockade and prepare orbital strikes on Earth's shipyards, Rail knew before the Concorde captains did. We have to act fast, Rail told Kira over a secure link. They're going to hit Luna and Ceres next. Then we hit them first, Kira replied. This time, the Aegis didn't hide. She dropped out of quantum slip near the lead dreadnought, engines flaring to life just long enough to fire. The resonance disruptor beam lanced out, silent, invisible. It struck the dreadnought's primary shield generator. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the generator began to vibrate, faster, faster, until its internal structure could no longer hold. It shattered from the inside out, taking half the ship's power grid with it. Lights flickered across the massive vessel. Engines sputtered. The ship listed, drifting off course. The Concorde fleet scrambled. Fighters launched. Point defenses spun up. But the Aegis was already gone, slipping back into the quantum fold before they could lock on. On Viridia Prime, the High Arbiter watched the reports with growing dread. This is impossible, it hissed. Humans do not have this technology. But the proof was in the void, 2 escorts gone, 1 dreadnought crippled, and no sign of how it happened. Meanwhile, far from the battle on the neutral moon of Xylos 7, a human linguist named Dale made a discovery that would change everything. He had been studying ancient ruins there, remnants of a civilization older than the Concorde. Most scholars believed they had died out naturally, but Dale found carvings, records, warnings. The truth was darker. The Concorde hadn't just risen to power. They had erased those who came before. A whole species, masters of resonance just like humanity, had been hunted down and wiped out. Their cities turned to dust. Their knowledge buried. The Concorde feared this power more than anything, and now humanity had it again. Diel sent his findings to Earth in a coded burst. When Rael read it, he understood. This was never just about a salvaged ship. The Concorde wasn't punishing Earth for breaking rules. They were trying to kill a threat before it grew too strong. Back on the Aegis, Kira prepared for the next move. The Concorde would send more ships, bigger ones, maybe even the Oathbreakers, their elite enforcers rarely seen, never defeated. But humanity was no longer hiding. They had shown their teeth, and the galaxy was watching. As the Aegis drifted through the silent dark, Cloaked once more, Kira looked at the stars, not as distant lights, but as future allies, future enemies, future battlegrounds. The war had begun, and Earth would not fight it alone for long. The Council challenged humanity and paid the ultimate price part. 3. The silence after the attack was heavier than any explosion. The conquered fleet hung in the void near Mars, damaged and confused. Their sensors scanned endlessly, finding nothing but cold rock and empty space. Yet 2 of their ships were gone and a third bled power like a wounded animal. On Earth, people still went about their lives. They did not know that humanity had just struck the first real blow against the galaxy's rulers. But in hidden rooms and shielded bunkers, the truth spread fast. Rail received Dale's message from Xylo 7. He read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper. The conquered had not built peace. They had built a tomb over the bones of a smarter, kinder species, and called it order. Now humanity had dug up those bones and given them new life. He shared the discovery with Kira over a secure channel. Her face, lit by the dim glow of the Aegis bridge, hardened. "They're not just bullies," she said. "They're murderers." "Worse," Rail replied. "They're afraid. Fear made enemies, but it also made cracks. And cracks could be widened." While the Aegis stayed hidden, Torin worked day and night in his lab beneath Geneva. He refined the cipher he had planted in the Concord's network. It no longer just copied messages, it could alter them. Just slightly, just enough. A routine supply order became a request for backup. A patrol route shifted by a few degrees. Small changes, but in war, small things killed. Then came the break they needed. A conquered freighter, carrying replacement parts for the damaged dreadnought, was scheduled to pass through the Helios Rift, a narrow corridor of space littered with magnetic storms. Normally it would be escorted, but thanks to Torin's tweaks, the escort orders never arrived. Kira saw her chance. The Aegis waited in the storm's heart, where sensors failed and comms broke apart. When the freighter entered, alone and slow, she struck. Not with weapons, with truth. As the freighter's crew panicked, a data burst flooded their systems. Not a virus, but a file. Dale's findings, images of the dead civilization, records of the genocide, the names of the lost. The freighter's captain, a Veln named Orlak, stared at the screen in horror. The Veln had always suspected the Concord's history was stained, but proof was different. This was undeniable. Orlak did not report the attack. Instead, he sent a private message to a contact deep within Veln space, a scientist who had long questioned the Concord's rule. That message sparked a fire. Within days, whispers spread across neutral worlds. On trade hubs and research stations, species that had long resented the Concord began to talk. Quietly at first, then louder. Back on Earth, Rail watched the data streams. "They're turning on each other," he said. "Good," Kira replied. "Let them." But the Concord was not blind. The High Arbiter called an emergency session. Accusations flew. The Cathari demanded tighter control. The Veln stayed silent. Suspicion grew like mold. Then the unthinkable happened. A Veln scout ship patrolling near Saturn detected a human distress signal. It was fake, another of Torin's tricks, but the Veln responded anyway. When they arrived, they found not a trap, but a gift. A crate of medical nanites capable of healing radiation sickness and regrowing damaged tissue. The Veln homeworld suffered from both. Attached was a simple note. "We remember your help during the Titan famine. Now it's our turn." It was a lie. The Titan famine had been decades ago and humans had sent only token aid. But it sounded true, and it worked. The Veln captain, moved by the gesture and haunted by Dale's files, made a choice. He sent Earth real intelligence, the location of a Concord listening post near Neptune, and the codes to bypass its shields. Kira did not hesitate. The Aegis struck at dawn, Earth time. The listening post never saw her coming. Its shields dropped like a curtain. One resonance pulse and its core melted into slag. All data was wiped, all logs erased. But before it died, the Aegis uploaded one final message into the Concord's central network. A message meant for every member species. It showed footage of the precursor cities. The mass graves. The Concord warships firing on unarmed civilians 10,000 years ago. The video spread like fire in dry grass. Protests erupted on 3 Concord worlds. On the Cathari moon of Lyra, students smashed government screens. On the Veln homeworld, elders demanded answers. Even the silent insect-like Zorma began to question their leaders. The High Arbiter tried to shut it down. He declared the footage fake. He ordered arrests. But the doubt was already planted, and doubt was a weapon sharper than any disruptor. Meanwhile, the Aegis returned to the dark. Her crew was tired, but their eyes burned with purpose. They had done more than damage ships. They had shaken an empire. Kira stood on the observation deck watching Jupiter's storms swirl below. Joss joined her. "Do you think it's enough?" He asked. "No," she said, "but it's a start." On Earth, Rael met with Marin and Torin. They knew the Concord would not fall from shame alone. Pride ran too deep. "They'll send the Oathbreakers," Torin said quietly. The Oathbreakers were legend, elite warriors who answered only to the High Arbiter. They did not negotiate. They did not warn. They arrived and cities burned. "If they come," Rael said, "we won't meet them with the Aegis." Torin nodded. "We'll meet them with the Odyssey." The Odyssey was not a warship. It had no weapons, no armor, no crew beyond a skeleton team. But in its heart sat the resonance core, a device that didn't destroy matter but unraveled cause and effect in a small bubble of space. Time itself bent around it. They had tested it once, on a dead moon. For 3 seconds, the moon aged 1,000,000 years. Craters formed and vanished. Rocks turned to dust and back to stone. When it ended, the moon was unchanged, but the sensors showed echoes of every possible past and future it could have had. If used in battle, the core wouldn't kill. It would unmake. The Oathbreakers would not die. They would cease to have ever existed in that moment. It was terrifying. And necessary, but the Odyssey wasn't ready. Not yet. So for now, humanity played the long game. Kira sent small teams to neutral worlds, sharing tech, sharing truth, building quiet alliances. Torin refined the core's stability. Rael prepared Earth's people not for war, but for what came after, because the conquered would not last. Their unity was a house of glass, and humanity had thrown the first stone. Now cracks ran through every wall, and soon, the whole structure would fall. In the silent void between stars, the Aegis waited, not to fight, to witness. The galaxy was changing, and humans were no longer the students. They were the teachers. The Council challenged humanity, and paid the ultimate price part. For the Concord was breaking apart, but it was not dead yet. The High Arbiter, cornered and furious, made his final move. He called the Oathbreakers. They came not in fleets, but in silence. 3 black ships shaped like blades slipped through the outer edges of the solar system. No signals, no warnings. They moved like shadows, faster than anything the Concord had ever fielded. Their mission was simple: burn Earth's cities until humanity begged for mercy, but Earth was ready. Deep in the Oort cloud, far beyond Pluto, the Odyssey waited. She was not built for speed or combat. Her hull was smooth and pale, almost fragile-looking. Inside, a crew of 6 monitored the resonance core, a sphere of swirling light held in magnetic suspension. It hummed with a sound that was not sound, a vibration that made teeth ache and thoughts blur. Torin was aboard, though he rarely left his station. His hands moved over controls that looked more like musical instruments than weapons. He had spent weeks calibrating the core, testing its limits, learning how to shape its effect like a sculptor shaping clay. "We have them on long-range scan," said the sensor officer, a young woman named Lyra. "They're heading for Luna." "Not if we stop them first," Torin said. The Odyssey did not chase the Oathbreakers. She waited, because the Oathbreakers, for all their power, did not know she existed. They expected the Aegis. They expected fire. They did not expect time itself to turn against them. Kira, aboard the Aegis, played her part. She sent a false signal from near Mars, a burst of energy that mimicked the Odyssey's quantum signature. The Oathbreakers took the bait. They turned, accelerating toward the fake target. As they passed through a quiet stretch of space near the orbit of Neptune, the Odyssey activated the core. There was no explosion, no flash of light, just a ripple like a stone dropped in still water. But this ripple bent reality. Inside the bubble, cause and effect twisted. The Oathbreaker ships did not explode. They unraveled. One moment they were whole, sleek, deadly. The next, their atoms remembered every possible state they could have been in, rusted, melted, unborn, and flickered through them all at once. Crew members screamed, but their voices never left their throats. Time folded around them, trapping them in loops of past and future. One pilot saw his childhood home, another saw his own death 1,000 different ways. None of it was real. All of it was true. Then silence. The 3 ships vanished, not destroyed, not gone, just unmade, as if they had never been there at all. On the Odyssey, alarms blared. The core overheated. Torrin slammed his hand on the emergency shutoff. The hum died. The light faded. Did it work? Lyra asked, her voice shaking. Torrin checked the sensors. They're gone, no debris, no energy trace. It's like they were erased from this moment. Back on Earth, Rail received the confirmation. He did not celebrate. He knew the cost. The core could not be used again soon. It needed weeks to cool, and the High Arbiter still had one last weapon, the Annihilation Pulse, a failsafe built into every Concord world. If the Council ever fell, the pulse would fire. A wave of energy that would fry every advanced circuit in the galaxy. Ships, stations, cities, anything with a computer would die. The galaxy would be thrown back into darkness, and Earth with its new tech would be hit hardest. Rail called an emergency meeting. We have to stop the pulse before it fires. How? Marin asked. It's controlled from Viridia Prime, the heart of the Concord. We don't stop it, Torrin said, his voice calm. We use it. His plan was insane. The pulse was a weapon of destruction, but its energy signature was pure, raw quantum noise. If the Odyssey could absorb it at the exact moment of release, the core could convert it, not into chaos, but into creation. It could reignite dead stars, Torrin explained. Heal broken worlds. Give life where there was none. But if we're wrong, Kira said, we burn the galaxy. We're not wrong, Torrin replied. The High Arbiter, unaware of the Oathbreaker's fate, prepared the pulse. He stood in the central chamber of Viridia Prime, his limbs trembling with rage. His council was in ruins. Species he once commanded now whispered rebellion. Even his own guards looked at him with doubt. He would not let them win. He activated the sequence. Across the galaxy, Concord worlds braced. Some hoped it would work. Others prayed it would fail. On Earth, every screen went dark for 3 seconds. Then a message appeared. Not from the Concord, but from Rail. To all free peoples of the galaxy, he said. His face calm, his eyes steady. The Concord's rule ends today. Not with fire, but with choice. Stand with us or stand aside. But do not stand in our way. The message spread faster than the pulse. On the Veln homeworld, leaders ordered their fleets to hold position. On Cathari stations, workers shut down weapons. Even the Zorma, silent for centuries, sent a single signal. We remember the lost ones. We will not forget again. The High Arbiter watched it all from his chamber. He saw his empire crumbling in real time, and then he pressed the final key. The Annihilation Pulse fired. A wave of blue-white energy shot out from Viridia Prime, racing toward every star system. But waiting at the edge of the solar system was the Odyssey. Torrin opened the core. The pulse hit it like a river meeting a sponge. Instead of spreading, the energy bent inward, drawn into the sphere of light. The Odyssey shook. Alarms screamed. Metal groaned, but the core held. And then it gave back. Not destruction, but light. The energy surged outward again, but changed. Cleaner. Warmer. Where it passed, dead stars flickered back to life. Frozen moons warmed. Barren planets grew storms of rain for the first time in eons. On a dying world in the Perseus Arm, a child looked up and saw her sun shine for the first time in her life. The High Arbiter stared at his screens in disbelief. His weapon had been turned into a gift. His power was gone, not broken. Not stolen, made useless by mercy. On Earth, people stepped outside and looked at the sky. They did not see warships. They saw stars, brighter than before. Rail stood on the same rooftop as before. The wind was cool. The night was quiet. It was over, but not finished, because now the real work began. The Council challenged humanity and paid the ultimate price. Part 5, the galaxy held its breath. The Annihilation Pulse had not brought darkness. It had brought light. Stars that had burned low for centuries now shone with new strength. Worlds long thought dead showed signs of life. The energy wave, twisted by the Odyssey's core, had not destroyed. It had healed. On Viridia Prime, the High Arbiter sat alone in the Great Hall. The crystal walls no longer pulsed with power. They were dull, lifeless. His council was gone. Some members had fled. Others had been arrested by their own people. The Veln had cut all ties. The Cathari declared the Concord dissolved. Even the silent Zorma sent a message: "You ruled with fear. We choose hope." The Arbiter did not beg. He did not rage. He simply sat watching the stars through the dome, knowing his time was over. On Earth, there was no celebration. No parades. People gathered in quiet groups, sharing news, sharing food, sharing silence. They had won, but they understood the cost. War had not been their choice, but they had faced it without flinching. Rael called a final meeting beneath Geneva. Only the original 7 were there. Kira had returned from the Aegis, her face tired but calm. Torrin stood beside her, thinner than before, his eyes still holding the weight of what he had done. "The Concord is finished," Rael said, "but the galaxy still needs order. Not control, not fear, just fairness," Marin nodded. "We can't rule it, but we can help build something better." They agreed. Earth would not take the Concord's place. Instead, they would invite every species, old members, neutral worlds, even former enemies, to a new gathering. Not a council of rulers, but a circle of equals. The first meeting would be held on Luna. In the weeks that followed, ships arrived from across the galaxy. Some came in warships, shields raised, wary. Others came in simple transports carrying scientists, teachers, healers. The Veln sent their best engineers. The Cathari brought historians. Even the Zorma arrived, their ship silent and smooth, carrying only a single delegate wrapped in soft gray cloth. Kira oversaw security, but there were no weapons allowed on the lunar surface. No soldiers, only voices. The talks began in a dome built on the Sea of Tranquility. Inside, no one sat higher than anyone else. No thrones, no banners, just chairs in a circle. Rael spoke first. He did not boast. He did not blame. He told the truth, about the salvaged ship, about the hidden work on Europa, about the choice to fight not for power but for survival. He spoke of Dale's discovery, of the lost civilization, of the fear that had driven the Concord to cruelty. Then he stepped back, one by one. Others spoke. A Veln elder admitted her people had known something was wrong, but stayed silent for peace. A Cathari scholar shared records his people had hidden for generations. The Zorma delegate did not speak at all, but placed a small stone on the table. Carved into it was the symbol of the lost ones. It was enough. By the end of the first week, they had agreed on 3 rules. No species would control another, no knowledge would be locked away, and no world would be left behind. It was not perfect. Trust would take time, but it was a start. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal, but not the old normal. Children learned about the galaxy in school, not as a place of distant rulers, but as a home shared by many. Factories that once built weapons now built solar collectors and water purifiers to send to dry worlds. The Aegis was retired, not as a warship, but as a symbol. She was placed in orbit around Earth, open to all who wished to visit. Her crew became teachers, sharing what they had learned about stealth, resonance, and courage. The Odyssey remained in the Oort cloud, guarded but not hidden. Torrin stayed aboard not as a weapon maker, but as a guardian of the core. He studied it not to destroy, but to understand, how to use its power to mend broken planets, to clean poisoned skies, to give life where it had been lost. The High Arbiter was never seen again. Some said he vanished into exile. Others claimed he walked into the wilds of Viridia Prime and let the planet reclaim him. His name was not erased, but it was not honored either. It became a lesson. Power built on fear will always fall. Rael did not become a leader of the new circle. He stepped aside, saying others should shape the future. He returned to a small house by the sea, where he watched the waves and thought about stars. Kira took a different path. She accepted an offer from the Veln to help rebuild their dying homeworld. She left Earth on a ship filled with engineers and medics, not soldiers. Her last message to Rael was simple. We're not just fixing ships anymore. We're fixing everything. Years passed. The new circle grew stronger. Trade returned, but now it was fair. Knowledge flowed freely. Young humans studied on alien worlds, and alien students walked Earth's streets without fear. The galaxy did not become perfect, There were still disagreements, still mistakes. But there was also something new, hope. And it had started with one small species, told to Neil, who chose to stand. On quiet nights, when the sky was clear, people on Earth would look up and see the stars, not as distant lights, but as neighbors. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, they had joined it, and in doing so, they had saved it. The Concord had challenged humanity and paid the ultimate price, not death, but irrelevance. While humanity, once called primitive, became the bridge between what was and what could be, and that was worth more than any throne.